Hi and welcome. My name's Joanna. It's a great pleasure to be with you for the next 15, 20 minutes, half an hour, depending on if you've got questions you want to ask me. This session I've entitled Reimagining Maslow. I'm guessing quite a few of you have studied Maslow already, or if you're about to embark on your A-level studies, you're about to discover the delights of Maslow. Maslow is a motivation theorist, and we teach and have taught Maslow for a very long time. And to be honest, when we teach this particular theory, we can be critical of it, which is right. We should be challenging these theories. Are they still relevant and are they still valid? And if we're honest, we've probably got a bit bored with Maslow because he has been around for such a long time. And it's, oh, here's another motivation theory. And I wanted to talk to you about it today because I think we can look at Maslow in slightly different ways. I have a number of props to help me with the session today. The first, we often tend to imagine Maslow represented in a triangle or a pyramid, a bit like this one, to make sure it doesn't reflect too much against the light. A set of layers, let me get it square, or if I get it square on, it's going to reflect, but a set of layers starting with the most basic at the bottom and going up, depending on the needs we have. It was all about needs, and we need to meet our basic needs first and then follow through others. So Maslow's theory suggested. We know that isn't always the case, though, that sometimes we might jump a level, that sometimes our other needs get in the way. So as I say, this has been around a long time, and people are, can get a bit bored with it, can even get a bit cynical about it. Last year, something happened, which of course we all know, that suddenly brought, certainly from my experience, Maslow sharply back into focus. And you'll have to forgive my imagery here. This was stolen from my daughter's bedroom. We got this nasty thing. This is the closest I can get to represent it. Coronavirus hit. The mini box, if you were wondering what on earth it was. We've had this pre-COVID. But of course, coronavirus was an horrific thing to happen across the world, and immediately changed how we studied and how we worked. So we often think about Maslow as a motivation theory for the world of work. And indeed, that's often how it's used. But suddenly it became far more all-encompassing. Back to my little pyramid. The sun's gone in. It's not reflecting as much now. Our basic needs, which often when we talk about work, we think about getting paid. If we get paid, we can buy food, pay rent, mortgage, whatever else. That meets our basic needs. Suddenly, in the workplace, our basic needs became a little bit more basic. We all know how significant this became. And it doesn't get much more basic, does there, than one, needing the loo, and two, being able to do whatever we need to do. But it wasn't just having loo roll, it was being able to buy loo roll. And we might have forgotten, because it's over a year ago now, just how panicked many of us were about, can we get this stuff? And what were we going to do about it? Suddenly our basic needs became very focused. So for me in the workplace, that meant reimagining and rethinking this basic need, because it was, I might need time off work or to take time out of my day or restructure my day to actually go and queue at a supermarket to meet my basic needs. And suddenly we had to reimagine what those basic needs looked like and what our response was going to be to those. That was the first one. And if you're remembering your Maslow hierarchy and having a bit of revision, basic needs. So the second one, can anyone remember what the second one is? For those who've done before, please do use the comments if you want to play along at home. Second, safety needs. And again, we all know that safety suddenly became very important with this nasty bug. The obvious representation, suddenly we all were wearing PPE. Now, this didn't come in for a while, did it, last year? Now it just is second nature. Before I go out, check my pockets, my keys, my phone, hand sanitizer, my PPE. And suddenly our physical safety became important. But also in the workplace, our psychological safety is important in terms of, do we feel safe at work? Have we still got a job? There were a lot of people whose jobs were seriously under threat and are still, if we're honest, through this pandemic. So suddenly we could attach new examples to a very old theory. The third area I want to explore, and again, hopefully you can remember the layers, the stages here, was around our social needs, or sometimes called our love needs. Now, we know that the pandemic really did affect those quite badly because, you know, back in the day, our love needs could be met. We could hug our friends, our family, perhaps sometimes even our work colleagues when appropriate. And suddenly that was not allowed anymore. And we had to keep trying to line this up with the camera. We had to keep our social distance. And, you know, you might be able to wave, but you couldn't hug. So suddenly we had to represent our social needs or meet our social needs in different ways. And as I say, sometimes they are called our love needs. And we want to be able to feel that we can love each other, appreciate each other. In the workplace, one of the ways that that was really realized for me is when we moved to the dreaded Zoom call, Teams meetings, which of course now we don't know about you, but I find actually quite routine. But not only were we challenged with some of these other needs that I've just mentioned, you know, people were challenged with working from home, doing homeschooling, and lots of other new challenges. And I can remember being in a meeting quite early on in the very first lockdown, and a colleague had her toddler daughter with her who kept sort of photo bombing our meeting. And I ended up sort of getting a little distracted, but in a good way. And we ended up playing peekaboo. No closing eyes, opening eyes. You can only really play peekaboo with a toddler because once they get to about 3, I'm not a child psychologist, I don't really understand all of this. Some of you might know this much better than me, but you know, they get to a certain age, they know you're there, they know you're behind, they can see the rest of you, you know, it's only your eyes you've hidden. So it's a game you can only play actually with very small children. But actually what it did was meet both our social needs just for a few seconds. Most toddlers don't have a huge concentration span. But it's actually really insightful peekaboo because you're hiding, coming back, and you're building in a trust that someone is there and they will come back. And of course, that grows and develops as we get older. So actually, it was quite insightful to develop that. Of course, our social needs were also impacted. We missed out on lots of social events. I've got to do this just because I've got the prop, so I'm going to do it anyway. Christmas, if not being cancelled, was definitely curtailed, and there were many other social, religious gatherings, events that we all missed out on. And it was important, I think, as well, to give us the opportunity to kind of mourn that. I want to keep these on. I think they actually help, don't they? I think they kind of suit me. Maybe not. A little unseasonal. But I do think that recognising that we couldn't achieve everything we wanted to, that some of our needs may not be met, was actually a really important recognition. And being able to take time out to actually almost feel a little bit sorry for ourselves was actually quite important. So that leads me to the next stage of Maslow, the fourth layer you often see represented, and that's our esteem needs. And I still think actually I could do better at this. I don't think I do this as well as I could. How often do we esteem others? How often do we say thank you? You can press a like button in social media, but is that really saying I value you? The best prop I've got for this, which isn't a very good one, she's going to kill me if she knows I'm showing this, is my daughter is now 17, but when she was about 6, she drew this. I've got to get this right in front of the camera. Sorry, it's reflecting a little. That's a portrait of Mummy, and it's still in a frame. And I still keep it in the office because she esteemed me. She thought it important enough to draw a picture of her mum. And, you know, at the time it was quite a likeness, I have to say. It's something that reminds me that I am valued by others. And I think the extent to which we can feel valued, the extent to which we can feel that we value others is so important. So again, very much that two-way relationship in terms of what we do. And I think that was an important thing for us to learn. So the final level of Maslow's hierarchy is self-actualization. And it's very, very difficult to represent this with a proper image because it means something different to everyone. For some of us, it might be that flashy car. For some of us, it might be a perfect relationship. For others, it could be a job. But the argument could be as well that once you've achieved that measure of success, you then strive for something else. And it could be something entirely different. I'm afraid I've gone quite sort of celebratory, and I've got a little party umbrella. Maybe one day I can pop it in a cocktail. But that sense of meeting our success. And again, the pandemic really challenged that for many people. There were a lot of things we aspired to that suddenly we couldn't achieve in the last year. And I think in thinking about that, we can now maybe regroup and imagine doing something different. For some of us, it's just the case of, I lost that year, I will regroup and I will do it this year, or I will plan to do it in the future. But for others of us, you know what, that dream car, it's not that important to me anymore. Suddenly, everything we've been through, all my motivations, my needs, apart from perhaps the basic, my needs have changed. And in reimagining what those needs are, it might help us to reimagine this motivation theory. Suddenly this became, in the workplace where I was, far more important than any of us knew. I can remember talking to people and I go, who knew Maslow would still be relevant at this point? And suddenly all those needs, all those levels of needs that we teach, that we talk about, became, I think, more and more and more important. So that pretty much sums up what I wanted to share with you. We know that those needs don't always work in order. And it's not a case of you achieve everything in one layer and then you're motivated by the next layer. It could be you miss out a layer, you can drop down, you can go back up. These are the things we kind of teach already in terms of the theory. It is in the end a theory, it's not a law or a rule. And certainly the past year has helped us reimagine how valuable the model can be. It's not perfect, but how useful it can be to help us make sense of a very, very difficult and challenging year for so many people, but also to help us think about the future. What will the world of work be like in a month's time, in 2 months, 3 months, 6 years, 6 months? We know it's going to be different. We know this has been such an important time. It's been a very traumatic time for many, but also such an important time for us to reimagine our lives and reimagine what we're going to do. And this is actually, I think, quite an exciting time to be looking at these theories and revisiting them, and thinking to the extent to which they can help us reimagine the future in ways that can be positive and challenge us. And help make things better, and make things good. I'm going to wrap up there. We can talk a lot about Maslow, we can talk about lots of motivation theories, but hopefully that's enough to just give you a guide through, maybe a bit of revision if you're learning this theory, or revising this theory. And I do hope it's useful to you, interesting. If nothing else, you've had a guide of the props of my home in this still kind of strange place that we're working at the moment. If you are studying, good luck with your studies, good luck with whatever assessments you are having. Yeah, I think I will stop there. Thank you.